Are you more likely to be Sal or Stevie?
Stevie?
That's the guy who runs away. I had to look up his name.
Oh, yeah, I did not remember. No, I would be the pizza delivery guy. That's the guy who I would be.
I can see it.
That's
Do you think I'm Sonny in this movie if we're casting me as anyone?
I could see it.
Honestly, I can too.
Let's get this dog day afternoon started with before we disintegrate.
Hello and welcome back to the Uncultured Pop Culture podcast. I'm your co-host Brandon, and with me, as always, is your other co-host
David. And that was so smooth.
Like, it's almost like I wrote a script to read it off my phone. We have a great episode for you today, some would say. We have a classic movie that I've never heard of, and we have an album that I have also never heard,
Ooh.
which is also a classic. So we're taking a trip back in time this week. We're going to the 80s, we're going to the 70s, and we're also going to 2026, because David and I watched and listened to some stuff last week, and I need him to tell me what he watched right now.
Are you ready or not to hear what I'm going to tell you about?
Ooh.
Because I watched literally Ready or Not 1 and Ready or Not 2. I forgot the rest of the title of that movie.
Here I Come, right?
Thank you.
Isn't it just like a
Here
pun?
I Come, Here We Go. Something. I honestly don't even remember what the title is anymore.
Ready or Not, Here We Come?
Here We Come? Here You? No, it is Here I Come. I looked it up. Which honestly,
Okay,
they
that's
should
what
have
I
just
thought.
called it Ready or Not, Here I Come. Instead of Ready or Not 2.
I
Here
agree.
Come.
Ready or Not
Yeah,
2,
it's
Here I Come.
stupid.
Yeah.
But hey,
But anyway, which one did you like more?
actually, I like the second one more.
Wow.
I think both of them are, just really fun movies. But I feel like the second one just has a little bit more going on. Not to spoil things, but in the first one, you have Samara Weaving trying to survive. And the second one, they introduce her sister, played by Catherine Newton. And I think like their relationship adds to the movie, even though it is very like basic level, sibling sibling problem stuff. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was stronger than the first one, although I think both of them are good. Also, Sarah Michelle Gellar was in this, so that was fun. I haven't seen her in anything for a while.
I don't know any of those three people you just named.
I'm
sorry.
not surprised about the first two. I will say Sarah Michelle Gellar is Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Could not tell you.
Yeah, but I mean, now you know. I will say though, little connection to Lord of the Rings. Elijah Wood was also in the second one.
I do
there you
know
go.
who this is.
That's right.
Because he's got big blue eyes. Beautiful.
Exactly. And he never ages. And with that, while we age here second by second, I'm going to ask you, what have you been listening to?
Much like how Elijah Wood never ages, this band that I listen to never ages because they took 6 years off, I'm pretty sure, to go to the army.
What?
This is BTS.
Oh.
BTS dropped a new album. Their first one in, I believe it is 6 years, almost 6 years. I think it was summer of 2020 is the last time they dropped an album. Anyway, this album is called Ari Rang. I don't know if that's how you say it. My apologies for my bad Korean. I do not speak it. I am white.
How dare you?
This album was not very good. I hate to say it. They brought in a lot of American producers, a lot of people I had heard of, a lot of people I liked. I feel like I don't really know what they're going for. It seems kind of unfocused. And that was my main problem with it. I've never been a huge BTS fan. I'll get that out of the way. I'm sorry to all the army. And please don't come after me and find my home address. It might be online. I genuinely have no idea.
Who knows at this point?
Yeah, and if it is, they will find it. But I don't know. This album just didn't really work for me. I do like K-pop, but it just doesn't it's kind of hit a slump as a lot of music has recently, where I feel like we're just kind of recycling the same ideas. There's not a lot of innovation going on. Okay. So that's kind of how I felt about this album. It seems like it could have existed in 2020, which is the last time they released music. Obviously, it's newer, but
I will say
I don't know.
two things. First of all, I forgot that Korea, South Korea specifically has the service, whatever, where you have to serve.
Yeah, mandatory service.
And that's why they went to the army. I thought they just were like, oh, that sounds like fun.
No, at
And
the
then I
height of their
remembered.
career, they were like, fuck it, we're joining the army.
Yeah, literally.
Or the military. Well, I don't even know if they were in the army. Their fans are called
Right.
the army. So maybe that's, but anyway, they joined the military, I should
Yes.
specify.
Yes. And I also want to to ask you, actually, kind of going back to what you said, where you feel like it all kind of sounds the same. Do you think it's because it got so popular and now a lot of the people that listen to it kind of want the same sound because that's why they liked it?
Honestly, not really. I feel like it's a lack of wanting to change by the people who manage BTS and kind of own them. I don't know how the whole like label structure works in Korea, but it's very weird. It feels a lot like servitude almost to these companies where like they own your name and likeness. It just seems like the label doesn't really want to get with the times. And that's kind of my main problem with it. It's not necessarily bad. I gave it a 2.5. It's perfectly fine, but it's not something that I ever really want to listen to again. And I will say, continuing my trend, they broke records. Spotify did not crash when this album came out, which is crazy because every BTS release that I have lived through, including singles, Spotify crashes that night because everybody is so excited to listen to it. And it didn't, which I thought was weird. And then looking at the totals, I mean, I listened to this album on Monday this week, and the totals for the weekend were like the biggest song is 24 million, which is crazy because usually it would get to around 50 million that first weekend, which kind of continues my thought of like, what is happening? Who knows? Because this has been a trend with Bruno Mars, Harry Styles, and now BTS as well, which are all big name A-list artists that everybody supposedly cares about, but doesn't seem to be streaming their music right when it's coming out, which is, you know, very different. It's much more passive than it is active now, which worries me and worries me for the state of music as an industry in the future. But on that note, we have to talk about music industry of the past. Because we're going all the way back to 1989, because this is Disintegration, the 8th album by The Cure, released May 2nd, 1989 by Fiction Records and Elektra Records in the US. It was supported by 4 singles, Lullaby and Fascination Street before the album, Love Song in August of 1989, and Pictures of You in March 1990. I want to ask you, what have you heard about The Cure before?
Well, let me just say, I have obviously heard of The Cure before, but I haven't heard any of their music before. I feel like in general, when it comes to like rock in the 90s and, you know, kind of rock adjacent stuff in the 90s, I don't know much. Honestly, just in general, like music from the 90s, I don't know very well.
I assume this extends to the 80s as well. This is 1989. I don't know what decade you count that in.
True.
There's a lot of arguments about that.
There are a lot of kind of subcultures within the rock and pop, you know, genres that kind of started during the 80s and, you know, became really big during the 90s. And I feel like those are the ones where I just don't know much about. Stuff like, you know, the punk movement, heavy metal, all the different styles of pop, obviously. And that kind of includes whatever genre The Cure is. Aren't there like 10 different genres, kind of?
There are a few, but I will bring up one specifically later because I wrote some about it.
Right. So, yeah, I honestly don't know anything about them. I did kind of look into them a little bit when I was going through the album, but even then, I just mainly looked at the stuff surrounding this specific album. So I don't even know that much about them. I do know that they influenced the goth movement, though, which maybe that's the one you're going to bring up. I don't know.
Have you heard any songs from this or any songs by them that you know of?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, that's kind of what I assumed, but I wanted to make sure that I was correct.
Yeah, no, not a single one that I can remember, at least.
So this band, I've been practicing this the past week of how to say this band's name. The Cure, The Cure, The Cure, like
the
QR code. So this band, The Cure, is from Crawley, England. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that as well because it's British and I never know what they got going on over there. My apologies.
Yeah, maybe they don't pronounce the R in the Cure.
The Cure, yeah.
The Cure.
Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, this place, Crawley, is a town south of London. The band was all middle school friends, and like most rock bands, went through a series of lineup changes in their early days. However, Robert Smith and Lol Tolhurst remained consistent until the release of Disintegration. Like most artists, their label felt that they had a better idea of the band's image and sound than the band itself. Their first album was a result of their label's interference, and because of that, Robert Smith felt like they had to venture fully into gothic rock for their second album. You are correct. In the middle of the 80s, they became more involved in new wave and post-punk music. After getting some hits, Robert Smith started thinking their pop-forward music wouldn't be remembered, and he felt that he needed to make the band's masterpiece. He returned to gothic rock, and that's how Disintegration was formed. Part of the reason that Smith felt like he had to make a masterpiece is because he was turning 30 soon. Most of the songs written for the album were very dark and depressing because he was scared of turning 30, as many are. I can speak for myself.
Right. Same here.
Okay, I was going to say no comment from David or no? Okay.
Don't, that's a train that's speeding towards us very rapidly. I did want to say, you talking about their relationship with their label is very reminiscent of Charlie XCX.
It's reminiscent of a lot of these big time artists that we've talked about. I mean, Madonna as well is the one I immediately thought of. Like, everybody has label problems, it seems. It's almost like labels should hire better people. I mean, Lady Gaga fucking got dropped by Island Def Jam. Insane. It should be noted that many people, including myself, thought that Robert Smith was the only one who actually made any music for this album. He said that he wrote all of the lyrics, but that the music had a lot of input from the other members. Pretty much except for Lal Tolhurst, who was deep into his battle with alcoholism. They used a lot of guitar effects on here and layered a ton of different atmospheric sounds into the mix.
Right.
I think this album is a good example of seeing where dream pop came from, which we covered with Slow Dive last season. And our genre this week is gothic rock. You guessed it.
Hell yeah.
It grew out of post-punk in the UK, and The Cure was one of the bands on the forefront of its development. It's defined by its dark lyrics, deep-voiced singers, large bass lines, and atmospheric sound. And I have to say, all of these apply here to this album.
Very, very true.
What were your expectations before listening to this album? The only thing that I know you knew is that it was long, because we looked at the length of it together and we're like, oh God, hopefully this isn't bad.
Well, when I Googled the album, I saw, gothic rock. And I was I didn't know what to expect from that.
You like gothic stuff. We know this.
I do like gothic stuff, but I honestly haven't heard much gothic music aside from classical stuff, maybe with the exception of like some of Billie Eilish's early stuff, which is
and even that might be that's more dark pop. I don't know. It stretches.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. So I did not know what to expect. I did expect something that's very dramatic, and honestly, maybe a little soundtracky, which did track. It felt very soundtracky to me at parts.
When the album came out, it got mixed to positive reviews by critics, but it did catch people off guard as it contained virtually no pop songs. However, looking back, it has been reevaluated and is now often considered the band's best album. And yes, it is on a ton of lists of both best albums of the 80s and best albums of all time. It's on the list 1001 albums you must hear before you die, and it is ranked number 116 on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time. It peaked at number 12 on the Billboard 200 and number 3 on the UK albums chart. It also was on the American year-end chart at number 35. It's certified gold in the UK and 2 times platinum in the US. And finally, like I said earlier, I have never heard this album before. I know a few songs by The Cure, but I've never heard enough to really form an opinion on them.
I gotta say, it is a little wild to me at how big this album was commercially, considering that, at least in my opinion, it's not what you would consider a classically commercial sound. Maybe it's definitely a little bit more out there.
I do wonder how much of that was because The Cure were just insanely popular and were making more pop-sounding music before this.
That is a good point.
And then everybody was just like, we like them, we get it now.
And I could see the fact that a lot of people were like, wow, this is the best thing ever made. Even if it wasn't right away, I could see that also impacting that.
All songs were written by Boris Williams, Lal Tolhurst, Porl Thompson, Robert Smith, Roger O'Donnell, and Simon Gallup. All songs are produced by Robert Smith and David M. Allen, who also engineered the album, with Richard Sullivan and Roy Spong.
Can I just say, Lol is such a great name.
His name is literally LOL, Tolhurst, or Tolhurst.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's Lawrence is like his real name, but everybody calls him Lol. And then there's Porl, P-O-R-L, whose real name is Pearl, I think, but he goes by Porl.
The 80s and 90s really were a different time.
Genuinely, I don't know what coke they were on.
Yeah, literally.
I think your favorite song on here will be Homesick. And if you have lost feelings by that point, my backup pick is Plain Song, which is the first song of the album. And your least favorite song will be Lullaby, if you choose one. And I said that you will give this a 3. So let's get into it with track number 1, Plain Song, all one word. This is considered one of the best openings to an album ever. I don't think I would go that far, but I do think it is a very nice opening that sets the tone for the album. It has been compared to a storm and a Gothic cathedral, both of which I can totally see. And I said that I think it is pretty nice, and while it's long, it doesn't feel too long like some of the other songs that will be coming up on here. I gave the song a 3.
Yeah, I definitely did not expect all the bells, but I do like the production. It feels very soundtracky to me, as I said before. And I was not expecting, at first I was not expecting the singing to start so late. And then at some point when the singing hadn't started yet, I started to think that this was just a song that had no singing. And then it started, like the singing came in. So I was like, oh.
It's over 2 minutes on here and a few other songs on here before it starts, which is crazy.
There were multiple times where
that.
I was like, is this instrumental or not?
Yeah.
Which honestly, I would want to hear instrumental versions of these songs. I think that would work very well. Yeah, it's a solid song. It doesn't blow me away as much as I would like it to, but I do think it's a nice opening. I do find it very interesting, specifically the production. I think there's a lot going on there that I would honestly like to go back to and kind of listen to again. I do feel like, for me, this is the type of music that's more interesting rather than enjoyable, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. It's a 3.
We're starting off with the same score. Yeah, this is interesting. Track number 2, Pictures of You. This was the 4th and final single, released March 19th, 1990. It peaked at number 71 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 24 on the UK singles chart. And yes, there was a radio edit of this song that brought it down to a still lengthy 4 minutes and 48 seconds.
Yeah, for another artist, that could be like their longest song.
Yeah.
Literally.
If you asked an artist, like a present day artist, to make a song that was 4 minutes and 48 seconds, I don't know if half of them could.
Yeah.
We just don't make long songs anymore. It's sad. Anyway, this one, Pictures of You, is also ranked number 283 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. I don't want to say that the indie effect has set in yet, but it sure is close. This is one of those cinematic 80s songs that I feel like I would end up really liking in a movie, and honestly, I would probably understand it a little bit more if I heard it in a movie. The main problem I have here, as I will have throughout the album, is his voice, unfortunately. I find it to be quite annoying after a while, but this is one of those songs where I think it actually works. However, the song is well over 7 minutes long, so I do think it gets a little repetitive and kind of overstays its welcome. And despite that, it is still my favorite song on the album. I appreciate its simplicity, and it's pretty memorable because of that cinematic quality, and I ended up giving this one a 3. It is my favorite. So that kind of tells you my high score for this one. I mean, it does tell you, not kind of.
Yeah.
That is truly my high score of the album.
I felt the same effect that I felt with the last song, where it does sound very soundtracky to me. It's honestly very interesting listening to this as someone that listens to a lot of soundtracks. And honestly, to your point that you could see this working well in a movie, I could see this in a John Hughes movie.
For sure.
I think it would absolutely fit. When compared to Plain Song, Pictures of You feels like it has more direction, and that's why I prefer it, even though it's like twice as long. I feel like a part of me does feel like this song and the other really long songs are too long, and after a point they do become very repetitive. But weirdly enough, I also feel like if you cut them down, they would be missing something. Like they wouldn't be whole.
I can see that.
Which, I don't know, I kind of kept on going back and forth. I feel like maybe if they just sped up how the song develops, then maybe that would fix it. But I don't know. Because I feel like they need some of that time at least to develop. Ultimately, this is a 3.5. I think it's stronger than Plain Song. It's not my favorite. But I will say, even when I do give 3.5s, it's more out of an interest rather than, oh, this is really enjoyable. I feel like I am rating these more with the theoretical side of my brain rather than the dopamine side of my brain, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, not a bad thing, but also probably not something that you're going to return to a lot. But we'll wait until the end of the album to talk about that.
Yes.
Because we got to talk about track number 3, Close Down. Now, this is from Wikipedia. Close Down was written by Robert Smith as a creative exercise to address the physical and mental exhaustion he felt while preparing for the recording of Disintegration. Smith originally intended for the song to be a list of everything that he felt he was losing as he approached age 30. And from Robert Smith, the key song on the album could be Close Down. I think it's horrible that you become insensitive with age. When you're young and naive, you always have intense feelings. All you gain with experience makes you lose that. And I wrote 4 words. I think it's nice. 2.5.
Yeah, the indie, or I guess not the indie effect, the Shakira, or not Shakira, oh my gosh.
Shakira.
I don't know why.
It can be indie effect. It can be, I don't know. I called it indie effect because this does feel a little bit more like indie rocky than Kesha, but I don't know.
It's not the Shakira effect. That's something else I'll make up at some point because that does not happen to me when I listen to Shakira.
No, that's the Shakira effect is when you get attacked by a wild boar.
Or when you write the music for every single World Cup.
True.
But anyways, the indie effect, I feel like fully set in for me with this song. And that's why I literally have nothing to say.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's weaker than Pictures of You, but I feel like it kind of still keeps me engaged by being interesting. It's a 3.5. I feel like my scores for these songs, I don't want to say are arbitrary, but it's kind of like my experience of listening to this is very different from the way I typically listen to music. So it's kind of hard for me to score a lot of these. But yeah, I'm keeping it at 3.5.
Track number 4, Love Song. I should mention both this song and the previous one. This is just one word. I find that kind of interesting because it doesn't happen all the time on the album. There are some that are multiple words. This was the 3rd single, released August 21st, 1989. It peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 18 on the UK singles chart. This is the only song that I know from the album, and it's one of the standouts, probably because it is the most different from the others. This is a sincere song, and Smith said about it, "It's an open show of emotion. It's not trying to be clever. It's taken me 10 years to reach the point where I feel comfortable singing a very straightforward love song." I thought that was pretty nice. I did give the song a 2.5.
I particularly like the sound of this song. Maybe partially because it does sound different.
Yes.
But I feel like this song is one of the standouts because of that. And I've kind of alluded to this, but I don't think that, I am a Cure guy. I don't think that their music is really for me, but I feel like this is one of the 2 songs that is as close as they can get me, kind of, if that makes sense. It's like as close as I'm going to come to enjoying their music genuinely without it being more theoretical.
I will say that other songs by them that are a little bit more pop forward have worked better for me in the past.
Then maybe I need to listen to those.
Exactly. This album as a whole kind of didn't work as well as I thought it would, which I'll talk about later, because I thought there would be a little bit more pop songwriting in there. And it's kind of just like long.
Right. But I mean, this is a 4.
Oh, wow.
It's not my favorite song, but that is the highest that I go. And I do feel like, at least with this style, when it comes to The Cure, that would be the highest I would ever go. If I ever do listen to their stuff that's more pop forward, you never know. Although I will say, I feel like if I did like that stuff, my scores for these songs would go down.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because again, I feel like I am kind of rating this on a different scale of, I see the talent and I find it interesting theoretically, but not so much on a deeper level, I guess.
A little bit of a Prince effect there.
Prince effect and maybe Kendrick Lamar effect.
Gambino effect.
Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you, Gambino effect. I was mixing up my effects there.
Mixing up your rappers.
Yeah, exactly. Whoops.
Does David like rap music? Anyway, track number 5, Last Dance. Musically and lyrically, this is a very nice song. However, I think the invention of autotune was a good thing. I can see how this would work for someone, but unfortunately, I do not really care for it. I rated this song a 2. I mean that with the utmost respect because I appreciate what they're doing in a lot of these songs. I feel like Robert Smith's voice is just not for me, and that's okay. My opinion is not the end all be all, and I don't want anyone to take what I have to say as fact and not listen to this album. I think you should. I feel like this is a very important album to listen to. It's very interesting, and you might like it way more than we do, and that'd be good. However, this is a 2 for me.
Yeah, I wrote down one note for this song, and that was that the indie effect is going strong, and I'm a little sad because I would love for these songs to be a little bit more distinct, and that's all I wrote. It's a 3.5. I think it is blending in with all the other songs at this point. I do think that the part of the indie effect that I am also being hit with is where all my scores are the same because I'm listening to the songs back to back, and if I listen to them separately, the scores would fluctuate. I think that is also happening, and that's why all the songs are 3.5s.
That is part of the indie effect, and I feel like I might want to revise the indie effect a little bit because I feel like there's also an album effect here going on.
Yes,
where it's like
I agree.
A lot of these songs, if you take them out of the album, they might work better, but at the same time, you don't get the full context of them because this is supposed to be an album that you listen to like front to back. And I love that. I totally respect it. However, I do think that it can be a little bit like one note, especially if it's not something that you totally love. Track number 6, Lullaby. This was the lead single in the UK, released April 10th, 1989. It peaked at number 74 in the US and number 5 in the UK. Spider-Man is coming for you, David. Are you ready?
Which Spider-Man?
Great question. So it's not actually Spider-Man, the superhero, but it's the Spider-Man, who was a creature that would eat children when they were asleep. It was a bedtime story that Robert Smith's uncle used to tell him when he was a kid. It's not Spider-Man, it's the Spider-Man. There was like a description more of him that he's like more of a beast-like figure than a man, more of a spider than he is a man, where our Spider-Man is more of a man than he is a spider. Anyway, on that note, this song has also been interpreted as an allegory for sexual assault, drug addiction, and or depression. So take your pick.
Perfect song to be named Lullaby.
Perfect song to talk about Spider-Man in too. I could see this song growing on me the most out of any of these, mostly because when I heard Spider-Man mentioned, it really confused me, and I was kind of like, what the hell is going on? Why are we talking about Spider-Man? But it's the Spider-Man, so, something else. But musically, I do think this is my favorite song on here. I rated it a 3, so same as my favorite. This is a case of like the Slow Dive album, where if I come back to it, like the first time I listened to this, I was kind of like, whatever. Second time I listened to it, I ended up raising a lot of the scores of the songs up a little bit because I was like, I get it a little bit more now. It's not like totally for me, but I understand it more. And I could see this growing. I don't think it'll grow as much as Slow Dive has been growing, though. Like, I feel like I just connected with that a little bit more. But what did you think about Lullaby?
Ironically, this is the song. This is one of those songs that did work less for me.
I figured. It's only natural.
It feels a little bit more stripped back, maybe, than the other songs. And I feel like that kind of made me more, it made it feel a little bit more forgettable to me. So I was kind of just like, eh. It's still a 3, so we're in agreement with our scores. It is obviously our 3s mean different things. But yeah, it's just fine. It's okay.
Track number 7, Fascination Street. This was the lead single in the US, released April 18th, 1989 by Elektra Records exclusively in the US. The record label did not want to release Lullaby because Fascination Street was on the soundtrack for Lost Angels, which was a movie, and they felt that it would be easier to market in the US because of that. And it ended up peaking at number 46 on the Hot 100 and number 1 on the Alternative Airplay chart, which monitored modern rock radio stations. And David, it also peaked at number 7 on the Dance Club Songs chart, which is insane. Imagine
wild.
Hearing this song in a dance club. I know the 80s were different, but this is not like a dance song in my mind. Like, maybe if you're in like a goth club, sure. But like, I don't know. That's crazy to me.
I could also see it being like, oh, someone just took a shitload of cocaine or LSD or something, and they hear this and they're like, oh, hell yeah, this is what a real song, like dance song is like.
The only thing we know about the 80s is just cocaine, I feel like. But we do know something about Fascination Street, because that is Bourbon Street in New Orleans, according to Robert Smith.
Oh.
This song is another example of something that's musically very nice, but I do not love the vocals. However, listening to this again, it made me appreciate it more, but this song will remain at a 2.5.
Man, we're really sticking to like the cliche of the podcast because This song is my favorite on the whole album.
Oh, wow.
In a lot of ways, it feels more propulsive, which I think this album honestly really needs. The production and the vocals performance together just really work for me with this specific song. It's a 4. I feel like this song is the song where I can kind of enjoy it on a more than just purely theoretical level, which is why it's my favorite. I can kind of actually get into it. I will say, though, I don't see how this is a dance song, really. So
You don't want to hear this in the club?
I maybe like hear this in a goth club in between songs where you dance. It's like the rest song, the part where you go and get the drink or whatever.
True, yeah.
And make sure no one roofied you. But anyways,
Shout out to all the goth people. They would never do that.
that's true. That's true. Shout out goth people.
Track number 8, Prayers for Rain. I said this was a decent song for some of its runtime, but it feels way too long, and I'm kind of sick of his voice. The indie effect has set in from here on out. I rated this song a 2.
This song does feel very westerny and apocalyptic to me. And even though I like westerns a lot, it just doesn't really work for me. Maybe it's too emo for me. Maybe it's too, I don't know what for me. It's okay, but it definitely does not work as well as like the last song, literally. It's a 3. I didn't choose a least favorite, but I don't know. This could be it. One of the other ones could be it.
Interesting.
They're all the same at this point.
I did think that you might say that some of the songs on here are too emo for you because there is a lot of like pretty dark and depressing lyrics. But at the same time, the way it's mixed, you can't really hear what he's saying or you're not paying attention to what he's saying a lot of the time.
But I feel like that's also kind of emo in and of itself.
Sometimes. When we listen to some more modern emo, you will be listening to what they have to say and you'll be thinking, wow, how are people this messed up?
I mean, hey, I know you, so it won't be too much of a surprise. Okay.
Amen.
Amen.
Track number 9. The same deep water as you. I wrote down, too long, and I was done the moment his vocals came in. I am sorry. In full transparency, I ended up skipping this song after 6 minutes on my second listen. And interestingly, this is reverse track 9 theory. This is a 1. This is my least favorite song. I do not like this song at all.
This song does feel very similar to Prayers for Rain, but it feels like a more mature version, honestly, which made me like it more. It definitely is too long, though. But I did kind of feel like I had the thing going where I'm like, this does feel too long, but I don't see how you would cut it. So it does stay at a 3.5 for me. I will say at this point, I was just fully in like indie effect mode though. Like I literally would not know when one song ended and one began if I wasn't like on Spotify looking at
constantly watching.
Yes, just like
the time pass by.
My eyes probably looked like they were on coke because of how intently I was staring at it. So
how many times have we mentioned coke this episode? This is getting out of control.
When I'm at work, we sell Mexican cokes. And sometimes we put them in boxes so they don't fall over for carry-out orders because we put the food in a bag. So sometimes when I'm putting a Mexican Coke in one of those boxes and I write Mexican Coke on it, I wonder if anyone's going to look at that box and think that we gave them Coke instead of Coca-Cola. Anyways, back to you, Brandon, with the next song.
Track number 10, Disintegration. This is one of those songs that I wish I liked more because it seems like something I should really enjoy, but it just doesn't come together for me, probably because of the vocals. I rated this one a 2.
It's all the same to me at this point. I do like the sound of it, and I will say that the beat honestly reminded me of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is the second reference to John Hughes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I will say not the production, just the beat itself, like specifically the beat. This is 3.5. I am in full-blown indie effect here. I feel like I was also kind of losing my brain at this point because of the length.
I was going to say, I was surprised that you hadn't mentioned that earlier in the album because I felt like this was very much a Prince type of deal and Elton John, a Tyler, the Creator thing, where it's like after a while, David loses feeling.
I will say I had definitely lost feeling by this point, but I feel like it got kicked into high gear here because I feel like not most, but I feel like a lot of the longer songs are grouped here at the end.
Yeah, these last few.
So it kind of got.
Oh my God. I got to like whatever it is
right
before the 9-minute long song. And then it was like 9, 8.5, 7, 7. It's like, whoa, okay.
I was like, oh no.
Yeah, you get through like 3/4 of the album and you still have half of the album left.
Yes. Oh my God.
Well, we only have 2 songs of the album left, and one of those is track number 11, Homesick.
Which is how I feel thinking about how you used to live 5 minutes away from me. Or if I were to go by bus, 3 hours probably.
Pretty much, yeah. Oh my God. We're going to make a transit episode one of these days.
At one point, yes.
Transit only episode, bonus episode of Uncultured Pop Culture.
Yeah, we'll see.
I will say, before I launch into a long quote I have here, this is the song that I picked to be your favorite.
Right. I mean, not to spoil things, but I didn't hate it.
All right. It's probably a 3.5 is my guess. Anyway, this was the only song that Lol Tolhurst had a meaningful contribution to. From Roger O'Donnell, who was hired as Lol's replacement. Simon and I wrote Homesick. It started as one of Lol's demos, and it was okay, but didn't really have much going on. I think we only chose it to make Lol feel like he wasn't being left out. One night after dinner and a lot of drinking, Simon and I went back into the playing room and started just playing through the chord changes and improvising, and it sounded really nice. Originally a song written by Lol, although if we ever said that in the studio, Robert would get angry and threaten to take it off the record. The chord changes were based off Lol's demo, but Simon and I rearranged the song and basically rewrote it in one drunken night.
Damn.
This is a big whatever to me. I gave it a 1.5.
So that's why you chose it to be my favorite, huh?
Yeah, not my least favorite, but probably my second least favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything to add really at this point. I do like the instrumental parts of the song. I do kind of find the singing to be boring here, though. It's also way too long. But hey, I'm still stuck in that 3.5 gear. That's all I'm going to say.
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
Track number 12, the final track, Untitled. This is Robert Smith's favorite song, and he described it as a hopeful song in a hopeless world. I said, a nice enough end to the album, but unfortunately the back half is not nearly as strong as the front half. We got some Maroon 5 effect going on here. Yeah. I ended up giving this song a 2. It's fine, but I am kind of with you here. This is one of the few albums that we've done on the podcast where I've kind of just lost the ability to say anything new by the end of it.
Yeah, it is really hard to enunciate a thought because literally all my thoughts were the same by this point. I will say something kind of new did pop up where as I was listening to this, I was like, this kind of reminds me of some of the music in Over the Garden Wall, which is, I don't know, you would not expect that, but maybe my brain was also just so addled that I just did not know what I was thinking about. I do feel like this song, though, is honestly more surface level than some of the other songs. I feel like some of the other songs, you will listen to it once and then listen to it a couple more times, and every time you will kind of find something new there. But I feel like with this song, you've heard it once and that's kind of it. This is a 3. It's, a fine ending to the album, but it's kind of also just like, eh. At least it's not like 9 minutes long, though.
That is true.
That's nice. Yeah.
So we've reached the end of the album. I wrote down a little paragraph here. I said, honestly, this was not as good as I was expecting. I went in thinking this would be a 3.5 and maybe even a 4 if it worked like I thought it could. And I knew his voice was hit or miss, but sadly it misses on most of these songs for me.
Yeah.
I want to like this more because I like the vibe of gothic rock and the subculture is really cool. And honestly, even a lot of the instrumentation is great, but this just doesn't come together. And unfortunately, this is a classic. Maybe I don't like old music that much.
Yeah.
And I would like to apologize as well, because last week we said we were doing something British and I would redeem myself after giving a 0.5 to Brazil. And I unfortunately did not redeem myself this week because this album just did not really work for me that much. But I will say, I approached this album as like, I'm going to like this. And it kind of almost hurt more that I didn't because I really thought I was going to. I ended up giving this album a 2.5. And what did you think about it?
Yeah, this album was a really weird experience, to be honest. Which, hey, kind of tracks with the album itself. So coming into this, I wanted to like it because I was like, I've heard of The Cure. And I do think that, the movements that the band is involved in, like the goth movement, for instance, is really interesting and is something that I personally find very interesting. even if I don't know much about it. So I kind of was invested in liking it. Like I said before, I found it to be very interesting on a theoretical level. I think the big issue for me was that I could not really get invested in most of these songs on a deeper emotional level. And that's why ultimately it didn't really get me. I don't hate it and I don't dislike it, and I can definitely see why people do really like it. But I do ultimately think that at least this style of their music, the goth rock, is not really for me. And that's why, even though I did, give most of the songs a 3.5, this is a 3 for me.
Oh, I was right.
Yeah, I think I did
wondering.
not feel good about giving it a 3.5 because I felt like the fact I couldn't get invested in it emotionally would mean that a 3.5 would be too high for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, especially because I also don't think that this is the case where with time I would grow to like love them or anything. I think I might grow to like them a little bit more, but I don't think I will ever be a fan of this specific album, at least. More just a observer.
Well, that brings me to my question, which is, will you add any of these songs to playlists, and will you return to this album as a whole? Would you add either of the fours to playlists?
I could see adding them. I do think that I would not listen to them very much, though. Like, I would listen to the other stuff on those playlists much more. Because I think that even though I did like them, and even though those were the songs that I did connect to on a deeper level, that connection is still weaker to what I may have given a 4 on a different album, or with a different artist. So I do think at the end of the day it's still different. I feel like those songs would have been 3.5s on another album, for instance.
And I have to ask you, do you consider yourself a fan of The Cure now?
Not now, but we'll see once we listen to the more pop forward albums or songs.
And I'm actually going to respond to my own question. I said I wouldn't call myself a fan, but I'm also not a hater. Unfortunately, like I mentioned before we started this album, I feel roughly the same about them as I did before, which is I don't really have an opinion on them. And I've listened to a full album now, and I still don't really know what to do with it.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we talked about, where after some point it's kind of hard to like think of anything new to say about the songs.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of just hard to have an opinion on them based off of this album. So
it is weird. It's a strange position to be in.
It's very strange. Yeah.
But that's the album. We also have a movie to talk about, and these guys got themselves into some strange positions as well.
They sure had a Dog Day Afternoon to themselves.
They truly did.
Because that's the movie we're covering. We're covering Dog Day Afternoon, which is a biographical crime drama.
Ooh.
And I gotta ask you, are you ready to hear a very long IMDb logline?
This could go either way. Like, this could genuinely be extremely long, or this could be like 5 words, and I don't know what to expect. I don't know if this is a classic David or a classic David. 3
amateur robbers plan to hold up a Brooklyn bank.
Okay.
A nice simple robbery. Walk in, take the money, and run. Unfortunately, the supposedly uncomplicated heist suddenly becomes a bizarre nightmare, as everything that could go wrong does.
Oh, you got me.
I wanted to see if I could get you with that first sentence.
I don't like that. That sounds like a book jacket.
That's a paragraph. That's not a sentence. That's not a log line.
That's a mess.
But hey.
Oh my God.
But anyways, let's get the credits out of the way, and then we're going to talk about New York in the 70s. This movie is directed by Sidney Lumet, who we have talked about before a long time ago.
Because we didn't watch one of his movies. I think you just brought him up. And then we were like, we should watch some of his movies.
Yeah. Well, we brought him up, and I think I confused him with another director. So
I believe that sounds right in my mind. I feel like I remember editing this. Also, is it Lumet or is it Lumet?
I think it's Lumet, but I'm not sure. Let me look up. Sidney Lumet. Lumet? Wait. One or the other. I don't know, bro. We'll see. I'll probably pronounce it like 20 different times.
I was going to say you'll say it different every time.
But the movie is produced by Martin Bregman and Martin Elfand. It's written by Frank Pearson from a story by Thomas More. The cinematography is by Victor J. Kemper. I got that word down this season, like I told you guys. I just got to find another word to start mispronouncing. Anyways, it's edited by D.D. Allen. Distributed by Warner Brothers, and the MPAA rating is R. And some of the people starring in it are Al Pacino, John Cazale, Charles Durning, Chris Sarandon, and many others. Now, I have a question for you. When you start watching this film, you see that it's based off a real story. Did you know this before you started watching the movie, though, based off of what I told you?
I did know this because when you look it up on Letterboxd, I think it says based on true events is like the first thing that's on there. I didn't know that it was like loosely based on these events. Like I thought it was like more of a, like not a, what is it called? Not a docudrama, but like something that's a little bit like more like true to its source material, but they took some liberties, which I liked. I appreciate.
I agree. I think a big reason why is because the movie itself presents it very much as though like this is like totally authentic retelling. It all happened this way, but it's not fully like that. Obviously, like it is quite close in a lot of ways, but stuff was changed still. So yes, this is based off of a real event that took place in 1972. When, and I'm going to pronounce some names right now, so I apologize. I looked it up. Hopefully I can say it right, and then I want to hear the proper pronunciation from you. On August 22nd, 1972, John Wojtowicz?
Wojtowicz.
Oh, okay, that's easy. Wojtowicz, Salvatore Natriel, and Robert Westenberg attempted to rob a Brooklyn Chase bank. The robbery quickly turned into a hostage situation, just like how you see in the film, before Natriel was killed and, say it again, what's his last name again?
Wojtowicz.
Wojtowicz was captured. Thank you. This, of course, is what inspired Dog Day Afternoon. Wojtowicz had, in fact, decided to rob the bank in order to pay for the sex change operation for his wife, Elizabeth Eden, formerly known as Ernest Aaron. Apologies to dead name, but I feel like that is important to the backstory, considering that is a part of the film, who was in the hospital and not aware of the robbery, just as you see in the film. Now, of course, Hollywood came a knocking, even though I feel like this is not a story that they would typically come for.
No, this is a very like unique story.
It really is, thanks to Martin Elfand and Martin Bregman, because they saw, I believe it was an article about the robbery in Life, and they brought it to Warner Brothers and set it up there. And they went out and they got like the rights for the story from all of the involved parties.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, they actually did. And I believe that they did it to, obviously use stuff that they got in interviews with them, but maybe also to use their names, even though most of the names were changed, I believe. Mm-hmm. But the hostages were paid $600, which would be roughly $4,400 today. Wojtowicz, who was in jail at this point, received $7,500.
Oh, wow.
Which in today's money would be $54,400. And he used $2,500 of this for Eden's surgery.
Oh, wow.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, which I thought was a cool fact. Also, Warner Brothers paid for Natriel's funeral, which I thought was very interesting. And Frank Pearson was brought in to write the script, and he conducted his own research. He talked to a lot of reporters. He analyzed a lot of tapes, but Wojtowicz was going through financial disputes with Warner Brothers, so he refused to meet with Pearson. And we will talk about those financial disputes a little bit later. Now, Pearson struggled, but he had to turn something in because he had already spent his advance. So he was like, all right. And he eventually did turn it in, Christmas of 1973. And Sidney Lumet was brought on board to direct. And now they wanted Al Pacino. Now, he has obviously already done The Godfather. He is known. So they go to him, they say, hey, we want you to play this guy. They rename him to Sonny Wartzik for the film, and he agrees, and then promptly backs out. At this point, Dustin Hoffman expressed interest, which, could you see Dustin Hoffman in this role?
Yes, because they're kind of the same person to me, honestly.
Right.
Even knowing
Yeah.
both of them, I was kind of like, damn, didn't I just see Al Pacino in a movie? And I was like, oh,
Yes.
wait, no, that was Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy. Never mind.
It's really interesting seeing Pacino and Hoffman like in the 70s because they are similar in a lot of ways.
They're also both incredible. Like, I didn't realize Al Pacino was this good.
Yeah.
Like, I knew Dustin Hoffman was good.
They are
but,
amazing actors.
Like, wow.
I think because you saw The Godfather without seeing him in anything else, it's kind of like, oh, he's not doing much. But then you see him in other stuff and you realize how good he is in that film too. They're both amazing actors. I will say Bregman did not meet with Hoffman because he felt that Pacino had the sensitivity to play the role versus Hoffman, who maybe didn't have as much, which I kind of agree with. Like, Hoffman is a great actor. I feel like he would have made the character maybe a little bit more rough and tumble or something. I don't know.
I can see that for sure. He's a little bit more method, it seems like.
Yes. I feel like Pacino, like especially during those phone calls, he was able to bring a little bit more sensitivity than I think maybe Hoffman could have. But thankfully, Bregman talked Pacino back into starring in the film. And then Pacino backed out again.
Again?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Bregman said that it, quote, might have been a world Pacino did not want to explore, end quote. So it seems like he was kind of antsy. But he did eventually agree to be in the project a third time.
Again.
Yes. And then he backed out again.
Are you kidding me?
Yes. I will say he
God.
finally said, okay, I'm going to do it. And the fourth time was the last. He attributed his behavior to stress. That's why he was being so erratic. But he did ask if his character could be toned down from what was in the script. And a lot of people have actually noted that the interpretation of Wojtowicz that is in the movie is much more rational than the real life version. It seems like maybe that was another reason that Pacino was kind of worried about being or playing this role. And I actually have a quote from Eden about the real life Wojtowicz and the type of person he was. Wojtowicz.
And Lumet from before.
Whatever.
It's
Who cares?
okay.
But
I'm helping you.
Here's a quote from Eden.
That's a good one. You can't screw that up.
Exactly. That's the easy one. But the quote is as follows. Quote, he is good-natured, but sometimes went overboard, and he terrified me. End quote. That's the whole quote. Which I feel like you do see in the film, but
Definitely.
it definitely feels like they could have gone harder into that, and they didn't. Which I think was the good decision ultimately. But
I feel like also anybody who jumps to those conclusions that they need to rob a bank is kind of like a little bit,
Yes.
crazy, maybe.
yeah, definitely out there.
However, I respect deciding that that's the only thing that you can do, to achieve your goal, which, hey, that person, Wojtowicz, is much more motivated than I am to do many things. So shout out in a way.
I mean, hey, if I was trying to raise money for something, I would probably go and donate blood every week instead of robbing a bank. But that's just because I'm not as motivated, I go for the easy option.
Exactly.
Yeah. What can I say?
He wanted a challenge.
I will say, Pacino did refuse to kiss Sarandon as was written in the script because he considered to be exploitative. He expressed that the audience already knew that they were a couple and that the focus should be on conveying that the relationship was failing instead of focusing on the fact that they were gay or, in Eden's case, transgender. And Pearson actually agreed. And he also realized that they were talking on the phone, so they literally could not kiss. He had not realized that he was like, oh shit, wait, that's a good point. And it couldn't even happen. So anyways, Pacino also got Lumet to consider Cazale, who he had obviously worked with on The Godfather. And he got the role. And lastly, Chris Sarandon got his role thanks to his excellent audition, although Lumet would tell him to shift his characterization from, quote, a little less Blanche Dubois, a little more Queen's housewife, end quote. That's a direct quote from Lumet.
That means nothing to me, but cool. Shout out.
People who know movies will probably understand that. But anyways, after 3 weeks of rehearsal, which Lumet is very famous for doing, he is known for doing so much rehearsal that he is so ready when he's actually shooting that he brought in I think every single one of his films under budget and on time, which, hey, maybe some of the directors we've talked about could learn from him.
Shout out Ridley Scott. Shout out Terry Gilliam.
Shout out. But they started to shoot on a budget of $3.5 million in September of 1974. And Lumet did not want to shoot on Lumet. Sorry.
That's fine. You've said it differently so many times it doesn't
You
even
got
matter.
that stuck on my brain now.
Oh my God.
He did not want to shoot on a soundstage. Instead, they found a warehouse that was not being used and they turned it into a bank. So that way, they could shoot pointing out onto the street and they could shoot from the street inside.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you need that interaction, and that helped them film it in a way where it could look naturalistic. Lumet wanted it to look, quote, like it was shot by television cameramen fighting their way through the crowd, end quote.
It feels
And I think that,
very like documentarian almost, like in the way it's shot.
Yes, and that was what, he was going for. To the point that he put camera operators on wheelchairs so they could move around. Especially because he wanted Pacino to have the freedom to like improvise a lot when it came to blocking. And the whole cast in general were allowed to improvise the dialogue as long as they stayed close to the script. Now, how do you imagine that they did the large crowd scenes without CGI?
I would assume they hired a crowd.
They hired 300 to 400 extras, which if you look at the crowd, it's a lot more than 300 or 400 people. Because, first of all, Lumet asked the neighbors to like join in through their windows and like be looking at the bank and stuff like that. And as they were filming, more and more random pedestrians just started to join the crowd and naturally joined in with the chants.
That's cool.
It became like this totally organic crowd that they did not have to like develop and try to look real or try to make look real. Lumet at one point said, quote, "It's out of my hands. It's got a life of its own," end quote. Which honestly, I feel like that would like improve those scenes because it feels very true to life and makes it feel very documentarian or documentary style. And I will say the dialogue between Pacino and the crowd about Attica was all totally improvised. For the phone calls, Lumet also decided to shoot the 2 phone calls between Pacino and his wife and Elizabeth Eden back to back. And this meant that the whole thing ran for 14 minutes. So just 14 minutes of Pacino talking. This exhausted Pacino so much because of the level of intensity that it was bringing that after the second and last take, I believe, he started to cry. And Lumet would later remember shooting that scene as, quote, "an amazing moment, as good a moment of directing as I've ever had in my life," end quote. Furthermore, he felt that Sarandon did his scene very well and didn't resort to any cliches. And Sarandon would also later note that the scene would work for the audience because it, quote, "wasn't about a drag queen and his boyfriend." Again, this is his quote, end quote, "but about 2 people who were, quote, trying to come to grips with what is wrong in their relationship," end quote. The film eventually wrapped 3 weeks before schedule and within budget. Now, after editing, the movie premiered in 1975, and it became a big hit at the box office. It made $50 to $56 million on a budget of 3.5, as we talked about before, which I feel like this is the type of movie that would be very controversial today. So it's kind of crazy that it was made in the 70s, or I guess not controversial, but it will be controversial to some people. I think we all know who. It also received critical acclaim, and it received 6 Academy Awards at the 40th ceremony. Best Picture, Director, Actor, Supporting Actor for Sarandon, and Original Screenplay and Film Editing. And it won Original Screenplay. Which is kind of interesting to me that it wasn't in the material from, or best screenplay material from another whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe because they didn't like directly adapt a specific article or something. I don't know.
The rules around that have changed as well because Barbie became like a big problem as well because it was adapted from something, even though it's a toy. Like the entire story was original. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Someone who didn't like the film, though, was Wojtowicz's actual first wife, Carmen. She had received $50 for the rights to her version, which was $400 in today's money. Yeah, not a lot. But she was repulsed by the way she was portrayed. She felt it could not be farther from the truth. And both Wojtowicz and Pearson also agreed. They didn't like how Lumet cast the role or how it was performed or directed. And this was not helped by the fact that the film was being marketed as real, true to life. Now, Wojtowicz actually sued Warner Brothers for Carmen and for their two daughters. He sued for $12,000 in damages. He did not win because the characters' names had been changed.
Oh.
So the courts argued that because the characters' names had been changed, the film was not invading the privacy of the family, even though it was, portrayed as a real, as a true-to-life retelling. That being said, another lawsuit that he brought against the film was successful. He sued for 1% of the earnings, and he won $40,000, which would be $212,000 in today's money. And it was also ordered that $100 would go to Carmen every month, and $50 would go to both, or to each child, or maybe to both children. I'm not 100% sure, but they would get $50 weekly. Now, Dog Day Afternoon is considered a classic of the new Hollywood era. Many have noted it as being anti-authoritarian and is one of Lumet's and Pacino's best films. And in 2009, the Library of Congress found it to be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and selected it to be preserved in the National Film Registry. Now, based off of what I told you about this film, which I don't think I told you a lot, was it what you expected? And did you expect, I guess, what did you think was going to happen going into it?
I kind of didn't expect anything because I specifically was like, if there's going to be like a bank robbery that turns into a hostage situation, I don't even know what's going to happen. So I just kind of was like, I know it's based on true events.
Especially with how fast it happens.
Exactly. Yeah. I was expecting more bank robbery, less hostage situation. Yeah. And we got like, what is that? Like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of bank robbery. And then it's like fully hostage situation, which is crazy.
They're like, oh, we're not screwed. And then like 2 minutes later, they're like, oh shit, we're fucked. Yeah. And that does kind of bring me to my next question, because as we kind of talked about, we have obviously talked about other 70s films and specifically the issues that you've had with their storytelling. So I was honestly very interested, considering that this is also a 70s film, how does this compare to those films when it comes to its story and the way that it's done?
Well, I don't know that I can really compare this to any other film that we've done based on storytelling, because this doesn't feel normal in a way. It feels like a documentary.
Which is,
it feels
true.
like an unraveling of events instead of like a thought out constructed story. That also has to do with the material in two ways. It is a bank robbery, so it's like an event that has to start and has to finish. And then also, obviously, this is based on true events and is based on an article that was written. And I assume that when you're writing an article, you want to start with the beginning of the story and then end with the end of the event, I should say, and then end with the end of the event. And I felt like, there's not like flashbacks really or anything like that.
Which I'm very happy that they didn't do.
Exactly. It's very much self-contained. And I thought that didn't really like, it was different than all the other movies that we've watched on the podcast. Actually, I would venture to say this is a unique way of telling a story. And I enjoyed it. Not to spoil it, but I liked this the most of like the 70s New York movies that we've watched. And I am including Midnight Cowboy in that as well. So Taxi Driver, Midnight Cowboy, Godfather.
It was 1 year out of the 70s, so that's
exactly
close enough. Yeah. It feels like it shouldn't work in some ways, but it does because of the way that they approached it. I think if they had tried to make it feel like a film in terms of like, this is the first act, this is the second act, this is the third act, climax, resolution, it would not have worked as well. But honestly, watching it kind of feels like you are watching the news and you are getting the updates for this crime scene. And I think that's why it works so well. Even though it's obviously like you see things that you would not see if you're watching the news, but still, I think because of the way it was approached, it's very successful at what it's trying to do. And I think a large part of that is A, the script, and B, the way that Lumet put it on screen. Now, I do think there's something that is very important that we do got to talk about, and that's obviously the treatment of the characters of Wojtowicz. Is that how you say it again? Wojtowicz. Oh, Jesus Christ. Anyways, but the treatment of Wojtowicz and Elizabeth Eden. And I wanted to get your thoughts, especially considering that this was made in the 70s when things were obviously very different. Although, I mean, nowadays, I don't know.
we're regressing
We're back there.
So it's fine.
Kind of,
yeah.
Yes.
No. I was surprised at that development. There's a different way that they approached it back then. Obviously, in the movie, I don't even know how to really gender the character as well.
Yes, because in real life, obviously, Elizabeth Eden is a woman. But in the film, you're introduced to that character before their transition.
And at the same time, the character is referring to themselves as he, him.
Yes, that's the thing. It made writing my notes very difficult too. That's why I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to write Elizabeth Eden to be respectful. But it does make it very difficult to talk about in some ways because of the way that the film introduces it.
Yeah, I will say that character, I thought it was interesting because they said a psychiatrist told me that I was a woman, not like I feel that.
Yes.
And it was interesting because that's definitely a 70s way of approaching it. It's less about the person and it's more about what the person was told, you know? So I feel like that, I mean, outside of that though, I was very impressed with how they handled having a transgender person in a movie in the 70s. I was kind of like, wow, there's no F slur thrown around all the time. Pretty nice.
It's really interesting because you can see the misunderstanding of that community, within that line of oh yeah, they told me that I was a woman instead of that's just something that I feel. But at the same time, they are presenting this pure person as a person instead of a caricature, I feel like. And it's really interesting seeing the dichotomy of that. And I think considering that this film was made when it was made, it's kind of amazing that they did portray this person as an actual person.
I do want to say something on that point because I feel the character of Elizabeth Eden, which I cannot remember her name in the film. My apologies.
In the film, it's Leon.
Leon, that's right.
Yes.
The character of Leon. I feel like they did a great job with Leon. They did not do a great job with Sal. And that, I feel like, is my biggest problem about this movie because you understand Sonny. You understand the people orbiting around him, why he's doing things, why he's kind of acting crazy. You don't get almost anything about Sal other than he's like a loose cannon and he was in the war and that's why he's messed up. But I feel like that was the thing that I was most missing because he's locked in there too with everybody else. And all we hear is you shouldn't smoke. And he doesn't know where Wyoming is. And I felt like that was a really underdeveloped. So that was kind of a missed opportunity.
I agree. But interestingly enough, at the same time, I think the fact that he does kind of just feel like this unknowable loose cannon that can explode at any second does kind of work for me. In some ways, it feels like I don't really need to know more about this character because that's not the point of the character. I do think, though, that it's not 100% successful. I think that they needed to go a little bit farther with that if they wanted to achieve that effect of just oh my God, is he going to explode at any second? So I do agree, even though I do like the idea of having this character just feel like a loose cannon. I don't know. I think a part of it also for me is John Cazale's performance. I think he is, on the same level as the other actor, as Al Pacino in this film. Even though I do think that he was given less to work with, definitely. But I think that just speaks to how good of an actor he is, that you do understand what you do understand about him. Also, he passed away after only making 5 films. He had leukemia, I believe. And I think it speaks to his skill as an actor that First of all, he was amazing in all those films, but also all those films were nominated for Best Picture.
Wow.
I think he's the only person where every single film he was in was nominated for Best Picture. And I think that 3 out of 5 won.
That's insane.
So it's like...
Shout out to him.
Shout out to him, especially because everyone that worked with him talked about how much of an amazing actor he was and how great of a person he was too. And that's honestly the end of my questions. So I'm going to throw it to you for any general thoughts that you have that we haven't touched upon.
I feel like I say the same thing every week. I don't have that much to say.
Yeah. And then we talk for another like 30 minutes.
I mean, we'll see. But
We'll
I
see.
genuinely, I didn't write anything additional down because I was kind of like, I don't know what to say. I feel like the main thing that I took away from this is it works better than all of the other 70s New York movies we've watched on here.
Which does make me happy.
But at the same time, it still feels like it's missing a little something. And I wonder if that is because Sal wasn't as much of a big developed character as I would have liked him to be.
Right.
I feel like a lot of the interactions we have with the hostages are good, but there also aren't a ton of them. And I feel like I wanted a little bit more of Sonny with the hostages than Sonny with the police. And I feel like a lot of those moments of like, you know, the police trying to get him out and trying to calm him down went on a long time. And I feel like that's good because it makes it feel like a documentary and it makes it feel real. But at the same time, it is also a movie and it gets a little bit long sometimes and a little repetitive.
I can totally see that. I think for me, I feel like the way that the film is done because Sonny is obviously the main character and they want to develop him the most. And B, they were really trying to make it feel very documentarian. And I do feel that if they had focused more on the hostages and, Sal and, all of that, like the relationship in there, I do think you would lose quite a lot of those other elements. Maybe not so much Sonny as a character, but I feel like you would lose the feeling that it is a documentary. And I do feel like that honestly is what makes the film for me ultimately. I think that's what makes it so interesting and what kind of keeps me captivated, because if you look at the film, like, with taking that aspect out of it, it is a very basic film. And I do think that it would be much harder to make it interesting without those two main aspects, aka, the documentary style and like coming to understand who Sonny is through his interactions with the police. But then again, that is also just a personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you sacrifice the documentary style if you focus a little bit more on being inside of the bank. I feel like there's a way to do it, and
there probably
it's
is.
Not to say that like it would be a better film, but I might be a little bit more interested, or it might have worked a little bit better for me, because I do think like obviously Sonny's the focus of it and his interactions with the police are a big part of it. But I feel like there is another world that we don't see as much. Like he interacts with Leon, he interacts with his wife, who I'm forgetting her name, and his mother too shows up. Like there's a lot of things that happen in that like just outside of the bank part of the set. And I feel like the inside of the bank we didn't see as much. And I know it's not an ensemble cast. I wish it would have been a little bit more ensemble-y. I feel like, because, you are in one location almost the entire time. So ultimately, I did like this movie more than the other 70s New York movies, like I said. And I ended up giving this movie a 3.5.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. I'm very happy with that score, considering that this is a 70s film and the track record has not been great so far.
I'm pretty sure this is my highest rated movie of the season so far.
Ooh, okay.
Which is kind of low.
Yeah,
honestly.
It is quite low, but let me just say that I am like 99% sure that our next episode, which, hey, if you guys want to see what it is, go look at our Instagram, hint, hint. I think that that's going to absolutely take the cake and be your next highest score.
I think so. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, in my opinion. Obviously, The Godfather works very well for me, but I do agree that this does work better for me than Taxi Driver, for instance. And ironically, I feel like they have a lot of similar themes and ideas, and like their main protagonists are
in some ways similar.
I thought you were going to say insane instead of in some ways because
they're both insane.
Right.
Yeah. But I kind of prefer the approach that Dog Day Afternoon took.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, even though I think like, I'm not saying like Go Shoot Taxi Driver is a documentary, but I feel like Dog Day Afternoon works better for me personally. And I think that is in large part because of the stuff we talked about before. Obviously the performances and specifically the way that Sonny is developed and his relationship to Elizabeth Eden, the way that's developed, and the documentary style. I also wanted to shout out something else that I forgot to shout out, and that's just how hilarious this film is.
It is quite funny.
Yes, and it's funny with like this deadpan comedy that doesn't take you out of like the drama of the film, and yet is still very, very funny. And I felt like I had to shout that out.
I also wanted to shout out, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no music in this movie.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I did forget to mention that. There is no music in this film.
That adds to the documentary, or not even documentary, that adds to the like realistic, this is unfolding before your very eyes type of idea.
Yeah. All you have is like the sound of the crowd and all that, which I think honestly works so much better than music could have. And that's something that Lumet specifically decided not to have music. And I think that that was absolutely the right choice.
Yeah, I really liked that. I mean, we get the song at the beginning, but like, you know, that sets up the Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. In any case, my score is a 4.5. So it is very close to a 5. I do feel like the one reason why it's not a 5 is because this is a movie that I wouldn't want to rewatch as much.
I was going to say that exact thing.
Just because I feel like anytime you watch it, it doesn't compare to the first time you see it because you're not experiencing it as a documentary for the first time. So that's why it is ultimately a 4.5. But hey, I think it was a pretty successful week for us. Partially successful, maybe.
Partially successful, yeah. We got a good movie, and we have an album that we don't really know how to feel about.
Yes,
so,
which is better than an album that we hate.
Exactly. It did improve on our episode from last week for both of us. So that's important.
Yeah, and that shows that we're good at choosing stuff for episodes. Both for this week and for last week, considering that we had to choose bad stuff for each other. Bad stuff for each other.
And if you want to see what we're choosing for next week, or maybe somebody else is choosing for next week, head on over to that Instagram because we might have a special guest episode next week, and you might want to see who it is. Exactly. Returning special guest. You might want to see who that is and what they've chosen for you to listen to and to watch. And David, if they want to catch up after all of this talking that we've done and see where everything ranks for us, what our scores are for the episodes, in case they forgot, where can they do that?
Well, you can find that via both of our Letterboxd accounts and Rate Your Music accounts. And in case you're like, oh gosh, but I don't know how to find that because you guys have weird nicknames on all these accounts, you can find that literally in the description of this episode on whatever you are streaming on, or via our link tree on our Instagram, which incidentally includes our Instagram. And in case you guys want to tell us about how this episode specifically felt like a documentary to you guys, where can they reach out to us, Brandon?
Well, I was going to say comments are a great way to let us know what you feel on Spotify. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review, and you can also hit up that email, upcpod@gmail.com.
If you guys love this podcast, which of course you do because you're listening to it, go ahead and tell your family, tell your friends, throw it on during dinner because nowadays no one eats dinner together anyways. So throw it on during dinner, put it on your TV. And hey, tell your worst enemies too, because maybe you hate this podcast and you want to subjugate them to this podcast.
That's about all we got for you this week. And it's time for us to disintegrate, I believe.
That's right.
So we will see you next week.
Bye.